Dante's Boxing Nation, what's going on, guys? So since it was such a busy weekend of fights last weekend, I'm still making post-fight videos. I wanted to talk about Manny Pacquiao versus Mario Barrios and this decision ending in a draw, a controversial draw, I would say. But I also wanted to talk about old media's obsession with Manny Pacquiao, mainly what Jim Gray said to Manny Pacquiao in their post-fight interview. I'm going to give you guys a lot of contrast in this video like I always do. But first, let's go ahead and talk about the fight. So clearly, Manny Pacquiao, he is finally looking his age. We didn't see his aggressive ambush style in this fight. He was very reserved, very calculated, and because of that reason, I felt he was losing the majority of the rounds. He was not really letting his hands go at all. Only in the middle rounds did Manny Pacquiao get a little bit more aggressive, but he only did that for like 2 rounds, and then he went right back to being really passive. And let's also remember, Manny, he wasn't in there with the best champion in the weight class. Mario Barrios, he pretty much won this fight with his jab. And Mario, he could have been a lot more aggressive. I think Mario could have easily walked down Manny Pacquiao. This version of Manny Pacquiao, Mario, he should have been able to walk down. But he was playing it way too safe, just fighting behind his jab. So Mario Barrios, he didn't do that much in the fight, neither did Manny Pacquiao. And somehow, Manny Pacquiao, he receives this mythical praise by old media. And it also needs to be noted that Mario Barrios, not only did he throw a lot more punches than Manny Pacquiao, he landed more and landed more at a higher percentage. Now, when I first started watching this fight, I was expecting, because it's a PBC fight, I was expecting to hear Mauro Ranallo's voice. And I was so upset because for some reason, they either replaced him or substituted him with Bernardo Osana. Talk about going from the best to the worst. Mauro Ranallo, he is the best blow-by-blow announcer in the sport of boxing today. He is the most impartial out of everyone. And understand this, I'm comparing him to all of the lead blow-by-blow analysts. From Todd Grisham to Joe Tessitore to Jim Lampley. And Bernardo, hands down, is the worst. He's worse than Jim Lampley, worse than Joe Tessitore, worse than Todd Grisham or Chris Mannix. And just to share with you guys some of his greatest hits, I remember going all the way back to when Guillermo Rigondeaux, when he had just turned pro and he was fighting on ESPN. Now, keep in mind, he's knocking all of his opponents out, right? And he's knocking them all out early. And I remember Bernardo, he says on air, fans are not going to be that interested in watching him because he's another Floyd Mayweather, basically. This is what he said. He compared him to Floyd Mayweather as if that's a bad thing. The most viewed boxer ever, the most successful, and the best ever. What Bernardo was really saying is he praised to God that he doesn't have to see another black fighter as dominant as Floyd Mayweather was, especially a black fighter who's known for beating up Mexican fighters on Mexican holidays. Then there was a time when Bernardo, he was trying to be slick, you see, because he didn't only cover fights on ESPN, he also covered fights on ESPN Deportes. And whenever he was speaking Spanish on the mic, oh man, he would be talking with a complete different energy. I mean, he was super bold, saying the type of things that even he wouldn't say on regular ESPN speaking in English. So on one of the fight cards that Bernardo was covering on ESPN Deportes with his Mexican colleagues, matter of fact, this image right here is when he said it. They're having a conversation about the pound for pound list, right? Now, keep in mind, this is like maybe a year before Terence Crawford fought Errol Spence. So his colleagues, they surprised Bernardo by both telling him that the best fighter in the world is Terence Crawford. He didn't expect that from them. But when he did not hear what he wanted to hear, he got upset. And he said, well, I'll tell you this. If Terence Crawford and Errol Spence don't fight against each other, they are both cobardes, which means cowards. Now understand, he's really saying this because he's hoping that the fight doesn't happen so he can continue to criticize them both. But just imagine that. A boxing analyst, he called Terence Crawford and Errol Spence cowards on air. So not only did he feel more comfortable saying something so disrespectful because he was saying it in Spanish, but he also felt comfortable enough to say it because he felt even the reporters that did speak Spanish, they weren't going to report what he said. They weren't going to expose what he said about Terence Crawford or Errol Spence on some English boxing website. But unfortunately for Bernardo, he was wrong, because I had someone actually translate what he actually had said on ESPN Deportes about Terence Crawford and Errol Spence. And I completely exposed him. Matter of fact, I made a video and I even played the clip of the actual conversation. And then there was the time right after Terence Crawford had beat Shawn Porter, had knocked out Shawn Porter, I should say. Okay, this was once again after Canelo had already lost to Bivol. Before this, ESPN and old media, they were all saying that Canelo was pound for pound #1, the best fighter over Terence Crawford. Now, you guys have to realize, old media, they have been looking for a non-black fighter to replace Terence Crawford on the pound for pound list at the #1 spot for the last 10 years. 1 minute they will put him at #1, and then they will find some non-black fighter to replace him with. Then once that guy loses, they put Crawford back at #1. And the pattern, it has been going on like this for like the last 10 years. So once again, after Crawford knocks out Shawn Porter, the entire ESPN panel, everyone except for Bernardo Usana, unanimously says that Terence Crawford is the best fighter in the world. And my mistake, this actually was before Canelo lost to Bivol. It was Max Kellerman, Joe Tessitore, Mark Kriegel, Tim Bradley, and Bernardo. And of course, once again, the only analyst on that entire panel that disagreed with everyone else and still said that Canelo was the best fighter in the world was Bernardo. Okay, fast forward to last weekend, right? I'm getting ready to watch the main event. Now, when I tune in, Gary Russell is fighting, right? And keep in mind, at the time, I'm expecting to hear the PBC commentary team led by Mauro Ranallo. So as soon as I tune in, I'm hearing this voice that sounds familiar, but it's not Ranallo's voice. It's a very distinctive, and I'm saying to myself, that sounds like Bernardo, but I'm thinking, no, that's not Bernardo, this is PBC. But then all of a sudden, Gary Russell, who was looking good in the ring, he's in the corner, right? And he's fighting against his Mexican opponent who's putting a lot of pressure on him. And I felt like Gary Russell, he was trying to basically show fans that he could do what Shakur Stevenson was doing against William Zepeda the past weekend by fighting off the ropes, fighting with his back against the corner. And they were going toe-to-toe with Gary Russell in the corner, right? And then all of a sudden, the crowd cheers. And then I hear the boxing commentator say, oh, wow, the crowd just cheered right there. Abner, when is the last time you've ever seen the crowd cheer at a Gary Russell fight? And as soon as he said that, I knew for a fact it was Bernardo calling the fight. Gary Russell, he looked really good in the fight. He knocked down this guy multiple times and then stopped him in the 10th round. His name is Hugo Castaneda. Well, just like Bernardo's colleagues was disagreeing with him when it comes to the pound for pound list on ESPN Deportes, Abner Mares, he was bumping heads with Bernardo as well, because Bernardo, he kept trying to diss Gary Russell. After Russell had already knocked down Hugo a couple of times, Bernardo, he says to Abner, Abner, what do you say to the fans that say that DJ Zamora, he was able to knock out Hugo Castaneda in the 4th round, and Gary is allowing Hugo to go past the 4th round? What do you say to those fans who say that Russell couldn't do what Zamora could do? And Abner Mares, he said, I would say those fans, they don't know nothing about boxing, which is funny because he was really talking about Bernardo. And then Bernardo and Abner, they got into it again when Bernardo kept implying that if Gary Russell doesn't get the knockout, this is not going to be an impressive win, despite the fact that he completely dominated the fight, won every single round, and knocked this guy down multiple times. Mares, he was disagreeing with Bernardo, making the type of points that I was just making right now. Mares was basically saying, even if he doesn't get the knockout, this is still a great performance. And after I heard Bernardo say that, that's when I turned off the audio and I just put my headphones on, started listening to my music. I didn't listen to no more commentary. But by the way, once again, Gary Russell, he ended up getting the stoppage shortly after they had that debate. It was really like the bad substitute teacher just showed up, right? Didn't know anything about what was going on, was really just there to babysit the students for that day, right? And the students could clearly tell that this substitute teacher didn't know what they were doing. Well, that was the way Abner Mares was looking at Bernardo Usana when he was filling in for Mauro Ranallo. Moving on. Let's go ahead and get back to this Manny Pacquiao fight and fast forward to the end. So Jim Gray, he says to Manny Pacquiao, that was one of the greatest performances of all time, not just in boxing, but in all sports. Matter of fact, let me just go ahead and play the clip and then I'm going to break it down.
Manny, your thoughts on that decision?
I thought I won the fight. I mean, it's a close fight. My opponent's very tough, but it's a wonderful fight. I mean, good.
You're a 46-year-old man, and you had stamina back like when you were 35. How did you manage to pull that off?
Oh, just hard work, and then discipline, everything like that. And I have to keep my body shape as always.
What more do you think you could have done so that it didn't come down to the hands of the judges?
I'm sorry, that?
What more do you think you could have done so that you wouldn't have had it come down to the hands of the judges?
Oh, I'm trying to find a way to finish the fight, but my opponent is so tough, it's big, he's not careless. He throw punches combination and with defense, so it's hard, getting hard. But I just moving around and counter punch, power punch.
This is one of the great performances in the history of not only this sport, but all of sports. What will you take from this as the disappointment of this draw and time passes?
I think it's it's an inspiration to like old boxers that when you have discipline and hard work, you can still fight, and I'm so thankful to God, because without God, Manny Pacquiao is not here.
Man, I think Jim Gray, he even shocked Manny Pacquiao when he said this was not only, one of the greatest fights, but one of the greatest fights in all sports. Jim Gray was praising Manny Pacquiao like he's the GOAT. Now, let's just look at the dichotomy when it comes to Floyd Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao. I want you guys to imagine if it was Floyd Mayweather and not Manny Pacquiao that came out of retirement right now, right? And he decided to fight Mario Barrios and didn't even win the fight. They would have said Floyd Mayweather, he came back, he fought a bum and couldn't even win the fight. That's right. They would have threw Mario Barrios under the bus just to discredit Floyd Mayweather like they always do. And if Floyd would have beat Mario Barrios, they would have said, yeah, but you fought a bum. How come you didn't fight Brian Norman? How come you didn't fight the best guy at welterweight? Now, despite the fact that Floyd Mayweather is older than Manny Pacquiao, 2 years older, no one would have said this was arguably one of the greatest performances in all sports, not just boxing. Because if Floyd Mayweather ever got a draw and didn't win, regardless of his age, race fans would look at that as the biggest victory for them. Matter of fact, let's take this trading places a little further. Imagine if it was Floyd Mayweather that had a career where he had been knocked out 3 times in his career. Twice he got knocked out earlier in his career by 2 guys that no one even knows. And then later on in his career, he runs into Juan Manuel Marquez, who turns out to be his worst nightmare. And the fights are so competitive that they fight against each other 4 times. And the last time they fight, Juan Manuel Marquez, he knocks Floyd Mayweather out cold. And then after that, Manny Pacquiao, he just fights Juan Manuel Marquez 1 time and completely dominates him, beats him easy, plays with him. It's one of his easiest fights of his career. And then a couple years later, the build up to the biggest fight of the century, Manny Pacquiao versus Floyd Mayweather. This is the most important fight of their career, right? And Manny Pacquiao, he ends up winning that fight. If Floyd Mayweather's career went like that, can you imagine what they would be saying about Floyd Mayweather? We wouldn't hear any of the things they're saying about Manny Pacquiao, right? We know that for a fact. I mean, you could just look at the Devin Haney-Ryan Garcia situation as a prime example. Devin Haney lost to a cheater who tested positive for steroids, and the race fans, they still discredit Devin Haney to this day just because of that fight. So imagine if Floyd Mayweather had the career that Manny Pacquiao had. being knocked out multiple times, and then losing to Manny Pacquiao, and then losing and getting knocked out by Juan Manuel Marquez. We know what time it is. With that being said, I'm gonna wrap this video up. That's all I got for now, guys. I'm on to the next one.
Floyd, congratulations on this victory. To hear the words "still undefeated," what does that mean?
First off, I want to thank God for this victory. I want to thank all the fans that came to Las Vegas. I want to thank all the fans around the world that supported this event. He's a hell of a fighter. And I take my hat off to Manny Pacquiao. I see why he's one of the guys that's at the pinnacle in the sport of boxing.
Was this easier than you had anticipated?
I knew he was going to push me. I knew he was going to win some rounds. You know, he had moments in the fight, but, you know, I kept him on the outside. I was a smart fighter. I outboxed him. I wasn't getting hit with a lot of shots until I sat right there in the pocket. That's when he would land a lot of shots. And we did what we had to do tonight, and I'm truly blessed. Manny Pacquiao is blessed, and I want to thank all the fans that came out to support this event.
Why do you think you never figured out that left jab in your right hand?
You know, I can't really say. You know, I'm just, you know, a calculated fighter. You know, he's a tough competitor. But like I said before, you know, I got to take my hat off to my dad, because without my dad, I wouldn't be where I'm at.
And he was riding you. Why was he riding you so hard?
Because my dad wanted me to do more. But Manny Pacquiao's a tough competitor. You know, he's a very, very awkward fighter, so I had to take my time and watch him extremely close.
You said a couple of times to me and to others, you never wanted to win a fight so bad as you wanted to win this fight. Why? Because it was so long in coming?
You know, you say things sometimes, but all 48 fights, you know, all 47 fights before I got to this point played a major key.
But this one particularly, why?
Really not this one. All fights played a major key, you know. I wanted to win all fights extremely bad. Manny Pacquiao is a tough competitor. He's a true champion at heart, and we both was at our best tonight.
Was this worth the wait?
When the history books is written, it was worth the wait.
It was his fight through 6 rounds. Then Crawford became what we've been insisting he is for the past few years. He becomes the first guy to knock out Shawn Porter, and Kenny did it, whatever he says, because he knew what was to come. So if you want to argue now, if you want to argue pound for pound, I guess you can argue with Canelo, you want to argue resumes, you cannot argue welterweight. Cannot argue welterweight.
No, that's right. And by the way, it's not that Terence Crawford, in my view, suddenly flipped the switch and knocked him out. There was an accumulation. As I said, I gave the first round to Porter. I thought Crawford won. I thought they went odd even. Crawford won the second, Porter the third, Crawford the fourth, Porter the fifth, Crawford the 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th. Crawford, I felt, took over the fight and was landing the damaging punches, not just figuring Porter out, what's he going to do and how am I going to counteract it, but breaking him down, especially to the body, landing, taking his measure and landing the damaging shots. And I think the knockout reflected what had taken place up until then. It wasn't simply a flip switch.
However you score the rounds, he did something that no one else has done, and Shawn Porter, on arguably his best night, has been in there with everybody.
Gentlemen, here we are. And a lot to digest, a lot of conversations to be had. Max, I completely agree with your analysis. The accumulation, you could see it when you're sitting there that close ringside. You could see it on Crawford's face. You could see it in the looks that he was giving to Porter, that he understood where things were at every moment of that fight and where things were eventually going. The work in the 10th round was sensational, but the buildup was going to get us there some way, somehow. The pound-for-pound conversation, I think, is one that we should get into right now, and then we can analyze the fight. Because Timmy and I had long been voting Terence Crawford #1 pound-for-pound in the world over Canelo and Inoue. When Crawford went with the inactivity and Canelo started fighting and cleaning things up at 168 pounds, at least I understood who I was voting for because I had recent activity, and that's why I was voting Canelo #1. I believe that the accomplishment of Canelo at 168 pounds is great. You're undisputed, you've won. But it's a grander accomplishment to understand what Crawford has done now that he's come back and fought. I'm also a guy that had the first Triple G fight in favor of Triple G. Crawford, I have never had a fight that I have ever watched where one thing I've seen gives me any doubt. He will be my new #1 pound-for-pound fighter, but you can mix up the bag. You can pull out the name Canelo. Yep. I have no problem with it in a way. Crawford's getting my vote as #1, and that is not recency bias. I was waiting for him to come back and fight.
I mean, Porter's a very, very good fighter. He's not quite Triple G either, but I'll say this. When you look back at history, you will rate pound-for-pound fighters differently than you rated them in the moment. What I mean is, when Mayweather retired, I thought Andre Ward was the best pound-for-pound fighter in the world. When Andre Ward retired, I felt Terence Crawford was the best pound-for-pound fighter in the world. Not at every year since Andre retired has Crawford offered enough evidence to keep him in the #1 slot. But I suspect, looking back at it, I will think, in fact, he did occupy that slot the whole time. I remember years ago when Roy Jones was clearly better than everyone else in boxing, but there were some years where he wasn't fighting real big fights, and Oscar De La Hoya was, or Shane Mosley was, or Felix Trinidad was, and so they were jumped up ahead of Roy, and then Roy would come out and do something, and you go, well, no, Roy's actually better than those guys.
And we welcome you back here to Vegas on the heels of Terence Crawford's sensational 10th round TKO victory over Showtime's Shawn Porter, who was a 2-time welterweight champion, who fought everybody in the division, had proven himself, and nobody ever got rid of him. And then all of a sudden, here we are, Tim Bradley, and Terence Crawford steps it up little by little, and then was just as dynamic as could be in round 10. First the left uppercut, then the combination with the right hook. And Crawford's on top of the world.
It's just a matter of time. You know, I knew that Shawn Porter, the mistakes would come to the forefront, especially as the fight got later on. The lunging was part of the breakdown, lunging forward. I knew Crawford was going to be able to land the uppercut, check hook. And, you know, it took him some time. We knew this fight wasn't going to be easy. We knew that. I said it won't be easy, but I knew that Crawford will get it done. And I knew he would stop him. You actually picked the round 10. I picked the round 11. I said the later rounds he was going to get to Porter and stop him. But he's my #1 pound for pound. You want to know why?
Yes.
Because there's nobody on the planet that has the skill set that he possesses. Now, he don't have the same opportunities as Canelo has been.
Canelo's the biggest star in the sport.
Exactly. But as far as skill basis, Crawford is the best fighter on the planet.
Listen, we're having a fascinating conversation over here with Max and Mark and Bernardo, but let's bring in the guy who was the #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world, Andre Ward. Dre, your takeaway from what we saw tonight from Terence Crawford?
Well, I'm going to just say this about Shawn Porter. You know, man, he's everything that is right for the sport. You know, outside the ring, inside the ring, he approaches the game the right way. Great representative, and I have so much respect for him. And I hope that his legacy is not remembered, or he's not remembered as a guy who took the big ones but couldn't win it, because he's in every fight that he's always taken, and he's done more in terms of his willingness to take these big fights than some guys do in their whole career. So that's the first thing. The post-fight thing with, you know, Kenny Porter, I don't know what that was about. I could have done without that, because I thought Shawn looked really good, and I don't know what happened in camp, but Shawn looked really good, probably his best that I've ever seen him. He just got caught with a shot, and Kenny Porter did know what was coming, because Terence Crawford is the best finisher in the game. On to the pound-for-pound talk. I never took Terence Crawford off my pound-for-pound list, and part of that is because I've been through these times and these moments as a professional where I'm fighting and I'm cleaning guys out, but maybe there's a certain person they want me to fight, or maybe I had an injury or had some issues with the WBC, and you have lows, and it's very easy for us to forget what a person did or the quality they are because you haven't seen them. I never forgot about what Terence Crawford brought to the table. I looked at, he's fighting the best guys he can fight. He's demolishing all these guys. The last time Terence Crawford had a decision win was maybe 5.5 years ago, and he's calling for the big fights. That should count for something, and tonight he confirmed why.
Max, it is now 9 straight knockout wins as he comes in defense of welterweight title. But I'll let you lead the conversation with Mark and Bernardo as for #1 pound for pound.
Well, who do you like?
Well, I agree with with Dre, but I think that we should separate what Canelo has going for him in this pound-for-pound conversation is economic might. So he can pick and choose. His universe of opportunity is much greater than what
Canelo can fight anyone he wants.
Right.
Anyone he chooses, he can fight.
And he can also determine, to great respect, the terms. In terms of the eye test, in terms of the skill, in terms of what it's like to download information. And again, I'm with Dre. I thought that Porter was at his best tonight. But in terms of that eye test, I'm with Crawford.
It's very difficult for me because for the longest time I had Crawford above Canelo, and then when he became the undisputed champion, I said, you've got to give him credit for what he did, cleaning out a division in 11 months, and there was no easy touches. He made them look easy, and I think that's a credit to Canelo Alvarez. Now he's going to try to move up to cruiserweight now, and you know, it's a 10-pound difference because now, because of the Bridgerweight division, it's not the full 200 pounds, it's 190, and it goes back to the same criticism that he's always received. Setting terms, making things happen on your terms, and that'll be a detractor for him. But in the end, I'm still going to stick with Canelo, but if there was one guy I had to fight or didn't want to fight, it's the guy that was in the ring tonight, and that's Terence Crawford.
Let me tell you guys about Issa Israel Law Firm. It is a full-service legal practice based in Denver, Colorado, an emerging hub for combat sports and high-altitude training. If you're a fighter inside or outside of the ring and you need a law firm you can trust to fight for you, visit thefighterfirm.com or email help@iilawfirm.com. Legal representation is usually limited to plaintiffs or defendants in Colorado, but iFirm can help anyone in the world with trademarking their business name, logos, and U.S. immigration issues. This brother has been my attorney for a while and helped guide me through all kinds of business and civil issues, so make sure you guys go to thefighterfirm.com. All right, now check this out, guys. If you're looking to repair eczema scars, burns and bruises, dark spots and blemishes, the fever blisters, diabetic ulcers, this right here is the perfect product for you guys. It's called Elo Diki Face and Body Oil. Athletes and top-ranking boxers, they're also using it after training to reduce swelling, inflammation, and to ease the pain. So get yours today. Go to elodiki.com, like them on Facebook, and follow them on Instagram.